Welcome to Call It Growth. Welcome to the podcast. On Call It Growth, we connect through sharing stories and having conversations that support our limitless growth, healing, and becoming. And we do so alongside anyone and everyone that finds safety and comfort on the space. Speaking of safety and comforts, I just want to say thank you so much for the love that you've poured into the previous episode. I suppose each episode will be thank you for the previous one because I am appreciative, but also because that conversation did it, as hard as it was, people actually sent me DMs to say that must have been hard, but thank you, and I do relate. That for me is I suppose, the achievement of all, because I created Call It Growth to be that space of sharing and being honest about ourselves and our experiences and giving the most truthful account of some of the hardest things that we face. And so when I do that, though it takes away from me in some ways, this time I came back to the podcast. So it's different. It takes away from me in the sense that I'm bearing myself out to the world and all my vulnerabilities are out there. But if I can do that and someone else can find it within themselves to do the same, that's all I have been called to do. So thank you so much for the love that you have poured in. I am okay. This is a story, this is an experience I have gone through, and I feel okay today. So it's not something that consumes me as much as it used to, but it is part of my story nevertheless. So I felt it is important to share. Speaking of sharing and stories, which is all that we do on this space, today's episode is around bullying. So, trigger warning, if this is a conversation you are afraid might trigger you, you're welcome to continue listening, but I do encourage you to reach out to your support and the people that you find safe if you do feel triggered and are not sure, if certain emotions come up for you that are too difficult for you to manage. So you might have seen the interaction on TikTok where a certain creator posted, one of those prompting TikToks, tell me about something, so this creator posted a prompt and they said something about, tell me about your bullies, or do you still remember your bullies, or something like that. And then another creator commented and they said, yes, I remember them. They were on the news. For context, for those that are not in South Africa, we have a huge problem of gender-based violence and women being unalived by men. I'm not sure whether or not any of this might be censored, but we have a huge problem of GBV and women being unalived by men. In recent news, there was a woman that went on a date, what they thought was going to be a date with someone they had met. It was a first date, so they were going on a first date with someone that they had met, and unfortunately this person decided to end the life of that woman in the most brutal way, right? So the news was reporting on this story for a number of weeks, uncovering things surrounding her unaliving, right? So now going back to this story, so when this is what that second creator was talking about. I'm just going to say their name, but I don't encourage you to go and look them up and be harmful to them. So the creator name is Tabi. So Tabi responds to the original creator, whose like name I don't know. She says, the creator says, do you remember your bully, or something about your bullies? And then Tabi says, yes, I do. She was on the news and she was talking about Olerato, who is the woman that was unalived, going on a date. Cool. So that's what happened on social media. And people, there are multiple sides to, I suppose, how people received Tabi's comment. There are people that are saying that she is she's not compassionate, she doesn't have sympathy for the situation. How could she allude to the fact that Olerato deserved to pass that way? There are people that are saying that, well, she was bullied and she still carries this pain and resentment, therefore we do not have the right to tell her how to feel. I must say that I did see that Tabi also left a comment either on that post or a different post saying that despite how she feels, she does not think that anyone's life needs to end in that way. I also did see a few videos that she posted on her account. Essentially, I'm not going to repeat the things that she said, partly because I don't remember, even though I watched a lot of it, but also because it's not my story to tell. But she did essentially, people are saying that she's lying and she's trying to profit, or I suppose gain followers over this story. Some people were saying, why would she do that? Yeah, some people were saying she's lying. So she responded saying, but what reason does she have to lie? Because that was her experience. She has proof that this has happened. There's also medical records that show that she had been bullied, because the bullying was physical at some point, and so there are medical records. And then she also says she's then had to move schools because it had gotten to that level of severity. And as she explains it, it took a span, it was over a span of 10 years of her life. Now, when I saw that comment, I was taken aback. I was like, whoa, this is a very insensitive comment. However, it caused me to really think about where I stand in terms of the experience I have had being bullied as a child, and how I would react, I suppose how I react to encountering the people that have said certain things to me that I have considered harmful to this day, right? I am not going to say that her reaction was, in fact, I don't know if her intention was to say something harmful. I actually don't know what her intention was. I just wanted to bring that up as context to why I started thinking about this whole thing of bullying, and I suppose people having the expectation I don't know if people have the expectation of bullies to be forgiven. That's a very long way to say I want to talk about the experience of bullying, what bullying is, and whether or not bullies should be forgiven. And obviously relating it back to me and where I stood on forgiving the people that bullied me, I'm going to try to kind of, I don't know, share, right? So I remember having a conversation with my partner a while back. This must have been 2 years ago, or it wasn't recent, because I haven't thought about bullying or spoken about bullying in a while. And my stance on forgiving my childhood bullies was that I don't forgive them at all, because my boyfriend's argument was that, well, they were children and they didn't know that what they were doing was harmful. My stance was, well, either way, what they did was harmful, and it has harmed me to this day. The things that people said while I was younger are still having an effect to how I show up today. In particular, comments around my body. So I grew up a fat kid. I don't understand, like, I don't know what the experience of being skinny or normal sized. And I say normal sized, and I'll tell you why I say normal sized. I don't know what that experience is like. I knew that I was fat, large, looked old, had a big nose far before, like long before I knew that I was beautiful and that there was parts of me. In fact, I had all of me to appreciate and embrace, and I think that's why for me the project of self-love is so important, because it is repairing all the work of self-hate that has developed within me due to the fact that before I knew much about myself, I knew there were things about me that I should hate, right? And that is that I'm a large child, I'm large, I'm big. Going back to the concept of normal sized, I think when people brought this to my attention, now you must remember that I'm a child. Children are trying to understand the world. Children get almost like thrown into the deep end of this huge, big, wide world that is so vast, has so many things occurring. We are trying to understand the things around us, and that's how every child develops, right? And through understanding the world, I am internalizing the things that people that seem to understand the world, or rather internalizing the things that people around me are saying, like a period. I want to say internalizing things that people that understand the world are saying, because I'm going to touch on the contribution of adults in creating mean people. I'm not saying creating bullies, I'm saying creating mean people. I create a distinction here because I also am not sure whether I should classify my experience of kids being mean to me as just kids being mean or as being bullied, because there are plenty of experiences of bullying that I've heard about from other people, and I get to this place where I'm like, I don't know if, just based on my experience, I don't know if my experience of people being mean to me is so bad, because some kids have gone through the worst forms of bullying. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm opening up a lot of channels. I'm gonna forget how to go back to the original point. So kids are forming an understanding of the world, and as a child, forming an understanding of the world and who I am. I'm trying to understand myself. The thing that is recurring to me in forming my understanding is that I'm fat, and not only fat, I look old. And obviously when people say that, they're saying it in the tone that is wrong. You shouldn't be fat, right? There is a normal way to live and there is a wrong way to live. And the wrong way to live or to be is being fat. And therefore, that's why I'm saying I don't understand the experience of growing up the normal way to live or the right way to live, because for all I've ever known, I have been fat and that has been wrong. I've grown to know that there actually isn't, the only thing that's wrong with being fat is what people have created it to be through normalizing a certain body type, body shape, skin color. And I mean, we all know where that comes from, right? So that is my thing, right? Is that I have formed a perception of myself. The perception I started forming of myself is that I am fat and I am large. And by large, I mean my body size is bigger than the body size of the kids around me. So what I'm trying to say is that the effects of knowing that about myself that young, going back to the story of Tabby, the effects of 10 years of whatever experience she has gone through is most certainly going to be something that's so long lasting that once you come to understanding that should have not happened, would build a lot of resentment within you, right? And when considering child bullies, going back to the conversation I was having with my partner, my stance was, despite the fact that those people were children, what they have done has impacted me and it continues to impact me. Therefore, through that, I don't understand what forgiving them means, right? So maybe it's important that when we ask the question of should we forgive bullies, maybe the real question is, what does forgiving bullies look like? What does forgiving my bully look like? What I want to do is also define bullying according to the internet, and why for me it is a bit of a struggle to now. Only lately though, I'm like, was I bullied or was it just kids being mean, right? Bullying is defined as using force, coercion, violence, harmful teasing to cause aggression or to intimidate others. And so something, typically behavior would be considered bullying if there is a power imbalance. So that would be like, if you think of the case of children, a child that would be considered stronger or considers themselves stronger or more popular than the other, therefore bullies the other, or repetitive or has a chance of being repetitive. So something that starts and could potentially go on, right? And there are types of bullying. So there's verbal bullying, which is your teasing, saying mean things to other children, calling children names. Then there's physical, which would involve actual physical violence that one person would exert on the other. There is social or relational, which I've only come to understand now as a form of bullying, and that's where you use your social capital to exclude other people from your circle of people. So in kids, they would spread rumors around other children so that someone doesn't hang out with that kid, right? And then there's cyberbullying, which happens over like the internet. So understanding that, the one thing that for me was, I don't necessarily recall is any physical forms of bullying and any social forms of bullying. I don't recall. I don't know. It could have happened. I'm not sure. I suppose you could consider this like me being excluded or being teased in a certain way as a form of exclusion, right? Going back to sort of my experience of being bullied. So I've was always called fat. I think you see, I struggle with this because I was also called fat at home. Like your aunts, well, even sometimes parents, siblings, they call you fat. I knew that it felt wrong. Now I don't know if I can classify. Listen, this is a tricky one. To me, saying that to me felt like I was being bullied, and especially when other kids repeatedly said it to me. And there's obviously teasing that surrounded that. I remember, as a child, there used to be these songs that kids would sing, like "Studla mafehle fehle kusasu zubamuk," which is diabolical now that you think about it, because when have people ever exploded? And that's the type of things that really upset me. I cannot have the expectation for kids to be able to know that that is actually not a possibility. But as you can tell, like, I still get very upset over the fact that kids made comments like that about people's bodies. I get even more upset seeing it now because there's a lot of things we should be doing, or adults should be doing, in order to make sure that that doesn't happen. But I'll get to that conversation. There was also one where they say "Studla uweleka bicycle." Ciao. I also want to say that a lot of the you know, when thinking about the long-lasting effects of bullying, a lot of the things that people said about being fat, there's also the experience where, I'll come back to this point. No, let me say it. The long-lasting effects of bullying for me, right, is that as an adult, I have such an aversion to trying new things that involve my body physically participating in those things, because for as far as I know, fat people can't do anything. Like you cannot participate, like your body is a limiting factor to you being able to participate. One, two, the fear of falling. Oh my word, if as a fat child you fell, it would be so vastly different to any other person falling. People would literally retell the story of you falling and add the sound effect of an explosion, or like, it would be so mean and so harmful, man. But something I remember very like vividly is in my neighborhood, I used to hang around with these girls, and if they watch my podcast, I'm so sorry that this is what it has come to, but this is what you did to me, and there's that. So we used to obviously hang out together during the day, and then we would walk around the hood, right? And there was one of them who was a bit older than us. I think if I was maybe 7, 8, she would have been 12, 13, you know, around there. So she could navigate herself around the hood quite easily at that age. I didn't know much, like I didn't go out much at some point. I also don't know if that, like, when not going out much was as a result of knowing that going out would be such a negative experience for me. But they would say, okay, let's go somewhere, you know, to buy ice lollies or something, or go to Bamba. If you don't know what Bamba is like, there's a huge trampoline, and then you pay 50 cents to jump on the trampoline for like an hour. So they would know the directions, or like they would say, come with us, let's go to my aunt who stays 4 streets away. And then we would start walking, and they used to love this habit of, when we were walking, they start saying, they say, let's start running and leave her behind, leave the fat kid behind. Then they would start running, and I used to start crying because I was afraid that they would actually keep running and leave me behind, and I wouldn't know how to get home. So I feel like that's also why I get so anxious over large, like vast spaces, or the fear of getting lost in a place where I don't know because of that. And they would do that repeatedly. Like they would keep saying, like they would say, let's go somewhere, and then when we go, they repeat this behavior, right? That is one thing I can say potentially counts as, no, I think that's bullying. And so this is why I also, because at that point, I'm sure I could run, but I obviously would not be able to run as fast as the kids that were not as fat as I am. So it was a form of excluding me from certain things because of my body weight, right? And general things in school, like the one thing about school kids are mean. I remember there was this boy who also my parents had a likening to, because I don't know why my parents, like, they saw him once at school, and then they kept, you know, parents, they ask you, where's this person? But now we're ops, because there was one time where we were, I don't know what was happening in class, but we were just having like a normal picker, and he was like, yeah, you would say that because your nose is so big. And then suddenly I became aware of how big my nose is, and till today I'm always like trying to check if my nose is standing out, like, so yeah. And then from there we were ops, because every time my parents would ask me about him, I'd say, don't, like, it's done, because he had said something very mean to me. But every now and then he would bring it up, but it wasn't something where I knew that, okay, I can expect that he will say this. But he did say that over, sometime until primary school was over. A lot of these things actually also happened in primary school. In high school, I went to a different, how high schools have like feeder schools. I didn't go to the school that my school would feed into. I went to a completely different region. So in that school, I knew nobody, right? Even the people that I knew were like higher grades. So we weren't really we didn't interact much. So I remember I had this huge afro. I had grown an afro. I had this huge afro, which my school actually said was not allowed. Had I known better at that time, it was going to be a protest. But I ended up relaxing it. But going back to so I had this huge afro, and if you remember Generations at the time, there's this character called Umam Ruby, and she also had this huge afro, and she was of a larger body. Then I walk in school, I'm a grade 8, and this boy, I think he was grade 9 at the time, or grade 10. I know he was 2 grades higher than me. So he said, first day I come in, it's not first day of school, but the one time where we were allowed to enter through the same gate as all the other grades, because at some point grade 8s only came in through certain gates, and then they integrated us. When that happened, he loudly says, "Nangu Mam Ruby." Mind you, I think it's morning, so everyone is walking into the school, or even after school, so everyone is leaving, but there's a lot of people, and he says that so loudly. And I don't say anything because I'm obviously new to the school. I'm scared. I don't understand what's happening. Then he says that the second time. Then he says that the third time. And the third time I said, "You will never ever call me that again. And if you do, you're going to see something." And then he stopped. I remember my friend saying, "Oh my word, you're so brave." It wasn't actually bravery. I don't know what it was. But I figured, man, I was tired, and I'm not going to, that's not going to happen to me. Kids were mean to me in primary school. It's not going to happen to me in high school. That's actually not going to happen. Unfortunately, the experience is not the same for everyone. And for a lot of people, bullying continues through into their high school years. So now on the conversation of forgiveness, right? When I said to my partner, I actually don't forgive my bullies, to me that meant I'm saying, my partner's point of view was that bullies, a lot of children, don't know that they are bullying. They're saying mean things, and they're taking these mean things from home. Therefore, they are victims of their own environment. I think that's kind of where his point of view was. I said, I don't actually care. I am struggling with my body as an adult because for the longest time, I have been fed this narrative that my body's not good enough to do anything. As present, I can't try new activities. At some point during my childhood, I withdrew from being outside because being outside meant that kids would be mean to me, and constantly say things about my body. I was tired of hearing that my body was not right. And so I withdrew from that. I actually became the one kid that stayed in the house. And it wasn't the norm in my hood. After school kids, they go out, they play, you come back late in the evening. Well into your teenage years, you only start doing that when you're considered usisi, which if you know, you know. But that for me happened much earlier because I got tired of being outside. And I mean, it actually didn't work out in the worst way because I fell into books and a lot of art through that because I stayed in the house and I had all these things around me at home and I started being the creative that I actually am today. My experiences, though, did not make me who I am. That's just the byproduct. So my point of view was, well, I don't care. I'm affected as an adult. Therefore, I do not want to it almost feels like I'm honoring them or I'm letting them free, man. I'm letting them go scot-free, no consequences for their actions. And yeah, until lately when I kind of thought a little bit about forgiveness, right? you know, that whole thing of like forgiveness is not about them, it's for you. That's very easy to say, but it's not. It's hard in execution because the resentment just doesn't go away instantly, right? You make the decision that you're ready to forgive, but you will still continuously get triggered by encountering the people that said these things to you. And it's even going to be harder when you feel a certain way about the things that you got bullied about, and then you recall where that came from. It causes a stir of emotions. And up until I still don't know how to deal with that. I still don't know how to have bad days with my body and remember that all these feelings that I'm feeling are as a result of things that were fed to me when I was a child. Had I come to this knowledge of my body by myself, I think I probably would have loved my body way more than I do right now. And it contributed to like a general lack of sense of self. And therefore, those effects of bullying are so impactful, and me forgiving them means that I am accepting those actions. I actually don't know what it means. The aspect of forgiveness that I do agree with is that forgiveness is not necessarily condoning their behavior. Forgiveness is letting go of the resentment and anger that their behavior has caused you. So it's an active choice, and it's an active act of will where you continuously decide that even when you feel triggered by the actions of the people that had done that to you, then you are actively choosing not to carry anger and not to carry resentment. Once again, it's easy to say in words, but it's so much harder in action because you cannot choose, to not feel that way. You can choose to not do much about the way that you're feeling, but those feelings will come up nonetheless. So for me, on the question of whether we should forgive bullies, I think it depends. I think the extent of bullying and the long-lasting effects of that bullying will determine the readiness and the extent of the forgiveness. I think if you carry physical scars from that bullying, and this is also not to say that words aren't as harmful as physical force, but I think if you carry physical scars from that bullying, I think if you've had to move cities, I think if your life had a life-altering change to it because of the bullying, in my opinion, it makes sense why it would be harder to forgive child bullies. I don't necessarily think that you must do it, but I do think that where possible, the act of forgiveness, only up till the point where it means letting go of anger, could be a freeing experience. It is an experience I haven't gotten to. I still carry a lot of resentment because every time I think about the fact that I don't feel great in my body on some days, and I have this, I started working out and I'm constantly watching the scale, and I have a weird relationship with food today, and I always have this feeling that people are watching me and passing judgment to me over the fact that I've been working out but I'm still fat. I'm always like, do you know what? This conversation that's happening in my head right now would have never happened had people not fed into this "you're fat and it's wrong" narrative, or fed me that narrative, right? So that is something that still makes me extremely angry. I would like to get to a point where I carry less resentment, and I would like to get to a point where it doesn't make me as angry, and I have built up healthier mechanisms to carry myself through days where I feel triggered, but I'm still mad about it. Some aspects of bullying some aspects of forgiveness would also include reconciliation, forgive and forget, confrontation and working out. And that is an act of forgiveness I personally cannot participate in. I don't think there's any way for me to reconcile the fact that someone was capable of saying things like that to me. And perhaps this is the unhealed version of me speaking. I say this with the knowledge that there is a huge possibility that I have contributed to the experience of bullying for somebody else, right? Unknowingly or knowingly so. And I would not have the expectation of them to want, I wouldn't expect them to want to reconcile with me if I am a bully, if I was a bully in their story, right? I don't have the expectation of people that have been bullied to approach it with forgiveness because of the fact that it has lasting impacts. It can cause body dysmorphia for some people, trust issues for some, feelings of not belonging for some, loneliness. Those are the effects, and you carry those things into your adulthood, and it makes it hard to manage relationships because as a child, people spread rumors about you, and so you will always have trust issues with people. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know if bullies should be forgiven, but I think where I maybe also should touch on is I don't think that children who were bullies are necessarily bad people. And maybe that's something I have changed my mind about. Initially, I was like, they're bad, they are bad children, they're bad people in general, and that speaks to their character. I have now come to forming a different opinion about that. I think that children become victims of their surroundings. That is where I agree with my partner. I think about the things that, and a lot of people have this experience where you go back home after being in varsity for a year and everyone is like, oh, your body, you've gained weight, or you're skinny now, or you're this, you're that, right? Going back to the idea that children are forming their understanding of the world through the people that already understand it. When they see those people openly and freely speaking about people's bodies in that way and saying mean things, they think it's okay to pass judgment about other people in that way. When they see adults gossiping about another adult, and sometimes we all have this experience where some adults just do not honor the, I want to say that they don't honor the responsibility to protect children from certain conversations. So they'll speak freely about another adult, about their private life, about, so I think those habits that adults have get passed on to children, and children want to mimic this behavior within their circles, behavior that they cannot understand and cannot separate from, they cannot they don't have the discernment to know that it is not right, because to them, if the people that they look up to are doing it, it is correct to do so. So they're not bad people. They are just doing things that they're seeing from adults. And because of that, there is a part of me that can extend grace to the people that have bullied me. However, I'm not saying that grace should be extended to all children. There are ways that people get bullied that cannot, I suppose all bullying cannot be reversed, but there are just things where, and for me, it also has to do with age. I think once we get to high school, it becomes a bit gray for me where I can excuse children for being victims of that circumstance, because at this stage, you're starting to form an understanding of what is right and what is wrong. So for me, the threshold of forgiveness starts declining when when we start talking high school and university. And there are still people that get bullied in university. My threshold of even the possibility of forgiveness for me declines when we get to that point. I understand that I cannot put everyone on the same level in terms of their ability to know what is right and what is wrong, but to a fair extent, I would like to believe that I can, right? So that's also what brings me to this part of the conversation about the contribution of adults in this conversation. There was another trending conversation on social media where this creator Untatu made a comment about the fact that there's this trend of girlies doing burgundy nails, and she shares her opinion. She says that she doesn't like them. She thinks that it ages people, and she says that people at the age of 25 shouldn't, like, what are you doing wearing burgundy? This caused a stir where some people felt triggered by that comment. I'm not sure if to this day we all understand why that conversation triggered us. I can most certainly say why it triggered me. And that is because growing up as a child who was always likened to an older person, and that contributing to a range of other experiences that I've had, I think something as abstract as having nails shouldn't equate to any sorts of age, where then that situation becomes an example of mean behavior, but not necessarily bullying. However, mean behavior in itself contributes towards acts of bullying because children will want to replicate that behavior, is where she says that people that are 25 or girls that are 25 shouldn't be doing something as, like, unimportant as burgundy nails because it ages them, right? We all know that there is a certain negative connotation towards looking older, and that's why a lot of people have this obsession with wanting to be like, I look younger than my age. Obviously can't relate because for the longest time but we all know that there's a negative stigma attached to age that nobody wants to automatically be associated with because of a nail color. And so our trigger probably comes from us wanting to reject that for ourselves because we know what it means to be we know what it means to be old, right? And I think that's only where the mean aspect of it is that I find concerning. And that's where I think, though her action, like, I feel two ways about it. I feel like, sure, she must share her opinion. It is a public platform. What you choose to take from there should be up to how, like, your own discernment. But I do think that in the general sense, when we say things on the internet, when we say things in general, I want to almost wish that we consider that some child out there is going to consume this and take that as correct behavior to model. And I would want to wish that we don't do that because I want to see good in the world. That's ultimately where I stand with that conversation, right? And so when I think of the possibility that a 12-year-old will see that and think that it's okay to say it to somebody else, sure, share your opinion, but you can never take away the fact that your opinion can carry a mean undertone to it that might be triggering to some other people. You're not responsible for people's triggers 100%. However, I guess it's just social responsibility, in my opinion. And yeah, this is something that I'm very happy to defend, but also maybe happy to hear other people's opinions on it. I do agree people should, especially adults, shouldn't be getting triggered by something as trivial as a nail color. But for me, what I take from that, or what I want to communicate around that, is that you are saying something, it is your opinion, someone will see it, think that it's okay to comment on what other people are doing. So that could also go into comments about, why are dark-skinned girls wearing bright colors? You could share that as your opinion, and we know that is rooted in colorism, and it's something I have heard many times. And therefore, when I have to try a colorful nail color, I question myself 500 times. But imagine a younger, darker skinned girl wearing bright colors and people saying that as their opinion, that then it completely changes what an opinion carries, right? Or the effect of an opinion is what I wanted to say in many words. I also think that adults can do a lot better in protecting children in general from bullying, because when I raised the fact that people are saying mean things to me, I remember the adults around me saying, well, why do you still hang out with them? And that can also contribute to self-blame, that you are being bullied and it's your fault, right? So adults can do better in ensuring that if a child comes up and says that person is saying something mean to me, they try their best to correct that behavior. And if you are an adult that knows that your child is the person, or the child around you is saying mean things to other children, I think that also needs to be corrected. Going back to forgiveness, right? I think the one aspect of bullying that most certainly requires forgiveness is forgiving yourself. Sometimes bullying can cause feelings of blaming yourself for what happened to manifest, believing that it is your fault that someone has done that to you, believing that you've contributed towards someone else's anger and aggression. That is not true. And there is nothing inherently wrong about you that should cause somebody else to be violent or say mean things or come for you on the internet. As an adult that has experienced bullying as a child, the one thing that I would say is, sure, the expectation that you forgive your bullies can 100% be off the table, but forgiving yourself is a must. I will stop the conversation here. What are your thoughts on forgiving your childhood bullies? Do you think it's fair to you? Do you think it's fair to them? Would you want to reconcile with your childhood bullies? Would you want to confront them? Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Let's talk further. If you've gotten to this point of the video, thank you so much. It's important to note that some videos will portray a very unhealed version of me, and this video could be one of them. And I'm open to receiving feedback on that, and I'm open to working on that. Remember that you matter and you are important and that you're worthy. And if you need to be reminded to do this, remember to breathe. I will see you in the next one. Take care of yourself and goodbye.